Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Get ready to find your free will from your roots in the stars.
Welcome again, Talk Cosmos audience. Tonight is January 19th, 2019, and we're finishing the fifth of 5 talks because of the calendar. Every Saturday happens to be within that framework of the Capricorn energy, the archetype. And tonight's talk, the title more or less encompasses Capricorn's raw shadow. And the Devil card 15, that's X5 in the tarot deck. The last of these talks delves into the raw shadow of Earth energy manifestation because it's when the means justifies the ends, and rather than an ethical alignment. Not purely a moralistic issue, this is rather an archetypal demand within the energy to connect these polarizations within, to find that shadow and the corresponding shining light, which a lot of our talk will delve into because there is light where there is darkness. So we will discuss these illusions. They blind us because we perhaps only see the material, and we create further blockages by projection. But essentially, it's a matter of finding this equally raw light and shift those extremes of shadow energy. Tonight's guest is Tara All. That's A-A-L. Lots of first-rate A's, and she is a first-rate person and astrologer. Lives in Los Angeles, although she originally was, well, last I knew her, she was in Seattle. But she is an astrologer, Los Angeles astrologer now, a tarot reader. Boy, my tongue is just flipping around here. Pardon me. A tarot reader. And she uses archetypes, and most magnificently, very creatively. I've heard her speak, and it's really astounding how she draws in information. Tara completed Laura Nalbandian's Evolutionary Astrology program. That's in Seattle, and Laura Nalbandian is a premier astrologer who organizes the Now.Chat Northwest Astrology Conference and is also presently, and for some time, the president of our local astrology monthly group that's open for membership, and that's Washington State Astrology Association. And Tara's also a certified soul sign astrologer through Adam Gainsberg, another illustrious astrologer. She's a metaphysical writer, photographer, artist, and a lecturing speaker at several national, international astrology conferences. NORWAC, as I was mentioning, UAC, which is United Astrology Conference, and the local, besides others. These are just a category. But most interestingly, in 1990, I've got 19 on the brain, 2019, she'll be speaking at the annual International Astrological Conference in Delhi, India. And she's spoken at classes with Kepler College, that's an online astrology college. And I'm trying to explain some of this. We have such a mixed audience. There are people of you that know about astrologies and are interested, therefore, but there's also people that are on a learning wheel, so we'll all learn. And she also regularly speaks EA Zoom meetings, which is a focused group through Facebook and that, and published in the Mountain Astrologer magazine, Astrocom, other magazines, and currently the resident astrologer and lead writer for Sage Goddess. Hello, Tara. It's great. It's great to have you.
Hi, Sue. Thank you so much for having me. I feel that introduction was way more than I needed.
Well, possibly. I don't know. But the old tongue at some point. You know, tonight's subject, I'm so grateful that you are able to talk tonight, and that you brought this portion of Capricorn to focus, because it really attuned me with a lot of information that I've been wanting to put together. Because the whole idea of the devil is such, once again, it's alluded with so many images and connotations that really, when you start breaking it down, and that's really what Capricorn with the devil wants to do, is purify. You realize, oh, where's the fear? Wait a minute, this is not the truth.
Yeah, it's interesting when we're using the tarot. I think the devil is one of the most difficult cards to interpret in a reading, because it really is dependent on the person, right? What bedevils you is not what bedevils me, and so the devil is such a personal archetype in that respect.
Well, it is, especially with the idea that it's those illusions that we create through how we see. Because I was reading quite a bit the esoteric, and there's many aspects of tarot, but we have these illusions of what material, the manifestation, what we see, and that's all we see. And so how a person, how they've been working with that on their value system and everything, or being honest to themselves, I could see it would really differ tremendously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because in astrology, so often we relegate Capricorn to this, a taskmaster and someone who just tries to climb the ladder. But we forget there's this whole like lusty, sensual, earthy, indulging in the pleasures of the senses that comes with Capricorn. And I think we see that come out in the devil card for sure.
Well, it's a good point, because as we had talked a little somewhat, it's an earth sign, and earth is physical. So, and again and again with astrology, I think many of us recognize a larger focus of intent is to unify this physical with the spirit, and Capricorn really sings for that. I mean, I don't know if it speaks for it.
Yeah. I have this little note, Sue, on my little note in preparing for today, because I also was excited to talk about Capricorn. But I have this little note with the devil card, which of course the devil card corresponds with Capricorn, which is why we're talking about both of them together. But I had this note: the key is to awaken to the responsibility for our entire selves. And I have in quotes, "I'm the devil who made me do it." And I think that's the key, right? So many times with Capricorn and the devil card in particular, we're awakening to how we've projected the things we don't want to own about ourselves onto other people or outside of us, which technically is what our shadow is, the things that we don't want to own. So when we step into the responsibility, accountability shoes of Capricorn and say, wait a second, I'm the one creating my reality. My shadow is actually mine. I think our whole lives could shift and we become more productive and life is more satisfying.
This is truly true. I too was noticing a little comment that supports what you're saying with the classic projection of the Nazis that took all their fears and what presented them on a group of people that they were alienated from, and it's associated with so much fears, and that what you're saying and really is to own it, to own your own fears. Like I had to look at this and go, oh my gosh, I wonder how the energy of the word is going to react with people that are reading it. But then I realized it's such a beautiful, by facing every fear, by just walking into it, we turn on the light in a sense and see it for something, because really this devil idea has been manifested through religion as the negative, rather than the ancient god of Pan or nature, just the essence, like you were saying, of our physicality, of senses. We are sexual people.
Mm-hmm. And nature doesn't have morals. We humans create morals. And so this whole idea of putting morality onto Capricorn or Saturn as a ruling planet, that's a human created thing. And so we need to own that back too. And when we look back to nature, like it's our responsibility to be good stewards of the resources, but this idea of harsh right and wrongs, and as you were speaking about the Nazis, that brings up the word to me, scapegoat. And that's a word we use very often with Capricorn. What becomes the scapegoat? And people that have, especially Capricorn South Node, or in evolutionary astrology, we talk about, past life experiences with a lot of Capricorn energy. Oftentimes they were the scapegoat. And so this is something to recognize that we have a tendency to do this, just as humans we do.
Very important to remember. I've always thought, since I brought up, the Nazi, that if nothing else, if to absolutely remember this tendency to project, the scapegoat. You're so right. There's so many notes here. Yeah, if you have a thought, just leap in, because I've got, as you were talking about, it's just, I'm trying to find out where some of these are, but it's just. Go ahead.
Well, as you do that, when you were doing the write-up for this particular show, it was awesome how you talked about this. No matter how much the darkness of shadow, there's always equal light and brightness. And this is why oftentimes we see, what we might call tortured souls, or people that really go to the dark depths of who they are. Oftentimes these are our most creative people, because to whatever extent there is dark, there is light. And so when we play around with Capricorn this way, then we have to recognize that the things that we normally relegate to Capricorn, like shame, for example, means that Capricorn also holds dignity, right? So, along with responsibility, there's also unaccountability. Along with repression, there's no inhibition. So we can't ever look at something as just one. And I work with this in my work in my personal life with polarities a lot, because the polarity is the flip side of the same thing. And I think that can help us work with this energy, which sometimes feels heavy, to look at it in a new light, which I really love that you brought the idea of the bright light to match the dark shadow.
Yeah, even Lucifer, it means, bringing light, and the solstice, which is only, right in the neighborhood there of Capricorn, on December, December 21st, 22nd, is the extreme light versus extreme dark, and the heralding all that light. Yeah, and I think too, I was reading how Capricorn, this whole energy of devil can destroy and liberate. Because if we have desires, working with the material allows us to find the spirituality. It's like, does that really have a lot of energy associated with it? Or does it kind of die out and it's not really worth it? And where's the ethics? And really, it's not a matter of shaming. That's a good word that you bring up.
Yeah.
It's really just a matter of aligning with our higher of true source.
Yeah. Well, in the Druid craft deck, the devil card is Cernunnos, which is the god of life force, the wild god of the forest. And the whole idea of devil or Capricorn is harnessing your life force, harnessing it in the material world, and that ultimately is mastery on this plane, or on this planet where we live.
Yes, I love to hear this. It just reminds me again and again, and we're going with Uranus in Taurus, which for those non-astrologers, just bear with us. But at any rate, it is an important planet, 7 years in this cycle of Taurus, of breaking patterns. But bringing the connection of nature, because we've rejected. It's just amazing, these different parts all throughout the ancients for thousands of years. Whether it was Lilith or whether it's the devil, male or the female, not accepting all that nature part of living.
Yeah. And I think most of us would agree that we are disconnected from our natural selves. Most of us don't it's hard. I mean, think about technology is overwhelming us. There's distractions everywhere. There are so many rules or ideas, or this is acceptable, this is not. It's hard to get back in touch with what is actually natural. And all the earth signs to me on some level are, tap back into that natural drive, natural instinct.
Well, it is also the laws of societal or universal. And I was just finding here a little note that was about the who you just mentioned, which what was that? The
Kernunos?
Kernunos, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Always that pronunciation. But back to, right, Saturn with this, Cronus had the sickle. And so,
Yep.
and he had castrated his father, Uranus, and then Cronus was toppled by Zeus. So actually, as far as the planets go, you might go, okay, there's Uranus further out, then there's Jupiter, Zeus, and then there's Saturn. So, no, I got it mixed up. There's Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. Sorry about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course. So the point is that Saturn represents that. This is Howard Sassapors, Sassaportas, from the 12 houses. That's Sasportas for any of you there. Wonderful legend astrologer. But what he says is that planet Saturn represents exact and undeviating justice. The rewards for the hard work or persistence, that if we disguise that pain with a lack of fulfillment, then we deny that importance in that area of our life, and eventually that inadequacy or hits us where it hurts. So
yeah. Well, yes, and with Capricorn and with Saturn, we have to earn it. We have to earn it, but that ultimately is what brings satisfaction. I think and the idea that we can become masters of our lives. And I don't mean to be, supreme beings. I just mean to master our lives in the sense that we step up and take accountability for ourselves and pay attention with what we're actually creating, to what we're actually creating.
That's vital. And that does ring right back here by recognizing, the work and the area, owning it, just to kind of reinforce the themes that tie in what you've been saying. Yes.
What do you think about this aspect? Like oftentimes in a card reading, when the devil comes up, sometimes it's just a message to not take yourself so seriously.
Ooh.
Because sometimes Capricorn can just be so bound with rules and shoulds and shouldn'ts and am I doing it well enough and I should work harder, and sometimes it just means to cut loose. I mean, there's of course this we need to find a happy medium, but I feel like sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's we use words like mirth even to describe the devil card.
I was going to say you're very intuitive, because I was just reading a book too for tonight that I've had on my shelf. I was like, oh boy, I get to do this. The Tarot by Paul Foster Case. And mirth, and that's one of the books too that has a little Kabbalah orientation about it, but I wasn't bringing that in so much because, well, one of the signs here is eye is for sight, but it's about laughter. It's mirth. That's exactly it. And he was saying that there was a hymn that the ancients, as probably in Egypt, because the sun Ra god, Ra was a sun god in Egypt. And it was that thy priests go forth at dawn. They wash their hearts with laughter. Well, what a prescription. Because it's saying that it breaks up. I think is that breaking up, that purification of earth, of that sedentary fixation. And you see things in a different light. It's like suddenly it brings out another viewpoint, because the other part of reading this reminds me that it's crystallization, with earth, and therefore the crystals have the light, energy. Yeah, so mirth, I'm glad.
Yeah, and think about this with Capricorn and Saturn having to do with reality. Well, the real reality is it's not that serious. The real reality is it might not even be real, I mean, so I think we think it's funny how and the English language doesn't always do us favors. Probably no language does us favors because we come up with ideas with what words mean, and I think sometimes that even limits our understanding of things.
Yes, language really does, especially when we just, without elaboration. I mean, yes, of course we have a word to signify something, but over time they change, just like this. This is totally one of the most primary obstructions, we might say, because when we think of devil, suddenly it connotes all this history that we've lived with in the Western world for, since 300 AC or something, or not AC, since anyway, Common Era. So, whereas actually it relates way back to the wholeness of life, and it's that intention. Got name of the game. It's got to be that. Why does one want the material, and what's the meaning? And does the means matter to the end, or is it just no regard whatsoever, no ethic? And then, I mean, I'm trying to relate to what you just said.
Yeah, well, I was just kind of feeling into that, like the whole idea of, the means justify the ends, or these whole things. I mean, there's just, I don't know. I believe we have a responsibility to do what is best for everyone, for the planet, for each other. And so therefore, to me, part of Capricorn as an archetype is that wisdom, because Capricorn can see the 360-degree view. Capricorn can see everything. And Capricorn has an inherent ability to understand how things are working together. So in that respect, Capricorn to me is very akin to nature in the way that all the things are synthesizing together. Capricorn knows how to do that. We see people that are strong Capricorn running entire companies, and that's what they're doing.
Yes, amazing.
But to me, with that type of vision comes a responsibility. And I think this is one of the reasons why those with Capricorn energy and their own personal makeup sometimes feel a sense of heaviness, because I think they know deep inside that it's not just enough to reach the end.
Oh, yes. Well, hopefully, yes. No, what you're saying, I just really love that. The sympathizing energies. And it makes me realize, too, you're bringing that point that it's on the top of the chart, and that because if it squares, I mean, the energy, we have a horizon of the ground and we have the meridian going up to the polar North Star, where the MC, in that general area. And I say general because there's always, depending on where you're born and whatnot, and I'm trying to step away from the details, stick with the main idea here. Thank you. And that is that on either side is equal light. The horizon and the ascendant are equal light. And so, yes, Capricorn, I think, understands that there is this parental, role of little light and we're in the northern hemisphere, so there's the authority and the discipline and the direction, the mentor, of the guidance, ideally, of the higher ethical direction, alignment, because on both sides they see that people are equal. The ascendant, the vernal equinoxes, where energies are you and me, and it is a balance. Of course, that balance doesn't last very long. It's like so true. I like how you remind us that morals are people created. That's such a fascinating recognition, because since laws are so integral and boundaries to all of this and judgment, that it can so easily think that those morals are rigidly connected, instead of what would you say, the consciousness of the universe, the laws of the universe?
Yeah, yeah, and I think on some level, most of us all, I mean, we as humans, we do have an internal compass that leads us towards. I mean, there are certain things I think that most all of us agree feel good for us, and other things that we feel would, are not good for us. But I do think it's important to remember that energy on its own isn't good or bad. Isn't, it just is. And I do think that we are very quick to assign judgment towards things, or even meaning towards things. And I just think it's good to get back sometimes to work with just, okay, what is the energy, which takes some stripping away, which is interesting because I know we're going to talk at least at some point briefly about, the sun will move into Aquarius tomorrow. And that really is where a lot of that stripping happens.
Oh, this is beautiful. We will return to Talk Cosmos with Tara All from Los Angeles. And this is Talk Cosmos on January 19th, talking about the Devil card and Capricorn and the nature of materialism. Materialism and light. Thank you. We'll be right back. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, the furthest visible planet by the eye. By leaving a cycle based on meaningfulness and truth, Capricorn's energy establishes social boundaries in a structure incorporating rules, authority, and ethics. As a cardinal earth sign depicted by a sea goat climbing from the sea up to the top of a mountain, Capricorn overcomes fears through goals and ambitions to achieve mastery.
Celebrate your star energy blessings. Schedule a natal astrology chart consultation with Talk Cosmos host Sue Rose Minahan. You'll learn to better understand what personally fuels your soul's seed direction. Sue focuses on your questions to connect you into your unique heart's desire and your true soul path's birth essence, including a recording and a copy of your chart. Schedule by emailing info@talkcosmos.com. That's info@talkcosmos.com.
Hi, this is Willie Bodrak, a retired expat from Seattle, now living in Mexico. You're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we understand how to implement our free will through the cosmos.
Talk radio with a purpose. Alternative Talk 1150.
Hello again, everybody. We will continue about the lunar eclipse, but before, well, actually, this is a great segue for it because it's called a wolf moon because it's the first full moon of the new year, I was reading. But according to Carolyn Casey, she says the wolf is charisma and playfulness. And doesn't that relate perfectly, Tara, to what you were just talking about, mirth?
Yes.
It's so beautiful. And again, the Judith Hill, who is a Northwest astrologer, has eclipses in you, wrote many ideas about this, what eclipses are and the different ideas. But one of the things is of course leadership, the groups and whatnot. I'm sorry, I'm looking at all these newspaper clippings I have. It's just incredible. I mean, if it was groups, for instance, there's the VA. There was just in the paper, there may be an overhaul of the entire private care, which is rather alarming, thinking that we have this enormous veteran energy out there. There's also in Seattle here, homelessness, and Microsoft is going to give, I think, $1 billion toward, not give, but they're going to work out with the local, I don't know if they're local contractors, that might be good, but with contractors on a lower interest rates, so that in other words they can have affordable housing, if for no other reason because their workers may need affordable housing. I don't know, but we don't know this, but it's just again and again, and also so many people that have, for instance, passed. Like for instance, there's grief. This is the headlines: Poles unite in grief over Gdansk mayor assassination. That's Gdansk. Somebody came and just shot him. Or it says Australia gets a new prime minister. Because this energy of the eclipse lasts for a long time, and it's in Leo, and according to Judith Hill, that can be a long duration and even permanent. So I know you have thoughts too. It's really pretty a potent one. There's so many planets that are in their own signs.
Yeah, and of course, when it's a lunar eclipse, it really affects us emotionally on the inside. And for many of us, we haven't been taught, or we don't have a lot of tools for how to work with that. In other words, when strange feelings or angry feelings or even violent feelings or depressed feelings come up, because eclipses are like the lights flashing off and back on. And when the lights flash off and back on, we see things or feel things that we weren't aware of when they were just in their steady stream. So I do feel like it's good to be compassionate and give ourselves some space and some, just some tenderness, because the eclipse is likely to bring up emotional waves. I guess waves is the best word that I would use for it.
Well, that is just excellent, Dara, because the nodes are in Capricorn, South Node, and Cancer. And Cancer is totally our private processing, connecting with our emotions. And actually the antidote to too much ambition, that seriousness, is being tender. Just like,
yeah. Well, and that South Node in Cancer, Cancer is ruled by the moon. So yeah. We can't do any moon magic or any moon work or any moon interpretation without really recognizing that we're in the realm of Cancer. They naturally tie together.
Yeah, this energy, I can see, at least thinking of the nodes, will be lasting now for, 18 months, and I think it's been a couple of months. So it's still a good year and a half, more or less. That's just by itself, that energy is vital, in all kinds of capacities to connect.
Yeah. North Node in Cancer is leading us the direction of feeling more. And anytime we start to feel more, it's going to bring up our childish tendencies, because feelings oftentimes that the whole ground that Cancer kind of comes from is our origin. So it's going to bring up our little babyish issues. And with all this Capricorn energy, a part of us wants to say, no, I'm strong and I'm in charge, and I have the power. But the Cancer part says, wait a second, there's parts that are, soft on the inside. And I think that's, as we move into this, through this phase and with this eclipse, that, more that tenderness gets revealed. And these, it's sad when people take actions that are so harmful to others, but oftentimes it just comes from a place of not knowing what to do with that vulnerability when people start to feel it.
Well, it's true, because the natural tendency, especially with the moon, is to protect. And so then we get defensive, and because Mars is involved with Saturn, if we look at this, it's like a poster child for a lot of pure, raw, me energy, which may not be thinking, but in different terms. So, yeah, it's having tools, or just recognizing that, going back to that theme of where is it that our shadow is really leaking or bursting or simmering or being hidden. And I love the fact that you say, that whole idea, the lights are out, and when it comes back, you see what you didn't see in a flash, and then it's back. And Uranus there too is wanting to break it up, so it has its own little strobe going.
Watch out.
Yeah, exact.
I do think, though, anytime we're thinking about Capricorn with Cancer, and you can't really think about them separately because they are polarities, which means they're one energy field, no matter where they are. But Capricorn, when you're able to build a stability for yourself, when you know your limits, and when you are taking charge of yourself, and then it can be very safe to have those emotional experiences. Then vulnerability is not something that leaks out into a danger zone. It becomes something that there's like a safe space. And I think that Capricorn energy in general is good at holding a safe space. We use that word a lot in metaphysical circles, so I know it gets overused, but I mean it more generally than that.
No, it's really well to bring it in with a new flavor, you might say, or it's like a house with a new color of paint. It's very important because holding space is vital. It's that whole yin, and that was another thing that I know you had mentioned to bring up, was that Capricorn is a yin sign. It is receptive. It's as because around the horoscope it goes yang yin, that energy of giving, receiving, which again is it's motion. Like a snake moves. Is that contracting, expanding, or music, resolution, tension. So
yeah, I think about the yin or feminine nature of Capricorn, and it's also a cardinal sign, so it initiates. So we tend to think of it being more masculine or yang, but it's actually initiating on the inside. It's initiating on the inside so that it can take responsibility for itself and then in part complete the public identity, right? Because Capricorn is very much about who am I out there in the world? And that's not just our career. We use the word career, but I always love this example that your public identity or your Capricorn self is who everyone knows you to be. So for example, Sue, you and I, we could have any job. We could dig ditches, we could do makeup, but you and I would always be talking astrology. We'd always be doing some level of that and probably some level of counseling, right? Because we like that. That's who we are. So the job doesn't have to define that.
That's very true. It's a good way to specify or define or help to illustrate, because it clarifies, yes, that nature that you expand out or expose to the world that it, yes, comes back at.
Yeah, and then with Capricorn, the idea being the wise elder, but that public identity, whatever it is that whoever we are out there in the world, comes from within, but then it is a gift to the world. Like that is how, in some ways, I feel like when you look at the midheaven, for example, that's how you can best serve humanity.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is a matter of realizing that there is material. I mean, we are a person, we have flesh, we're sitting at a table, we have shoes, or maybe not, there's sand otherwise, or whatever right, all these issues. But that isn't the end all, and that acquiring for what purpose really is a huge element of that inside treatment, like we're saying that the yin feature is, so that when we do manifest, it has a higher, longer lasting flame, you might say, of energy.
Yeah, which to me is sustainability, and that's one of the main goals of Capricorn. Can it sustain? Yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful word. Yep.
Yeah, but you put that really well. That was really lovely.
Yeah. And so with this chart, it's going to be, oh yes, that's right. I have a little article here about this eclipse. It was in the paper. Total lunar eclipse. Now that's rather extraordinary because the eclipses are a long, long family of eclipses, and in the middle they're total, and they take a long, long time. But this particular one is on the 20th, and it will occur when the sun, moon, and earth line up, the earth passing between the sun and the moon, and it will begin on Sunday. This is in Seattle, or on the West Coast actually, which is Pacific Standard Time, at 6:36 p.m., reaches totality at 8:41 p.m. and why is that? Between 8:41 and 9:44 p.m. and over almost near midnight, 11:48 p.m. Yeah.
That is long. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, and so it is closer to the moon. It gets the PR, says it's a supermoon. Well, all the supermoons are when the orbit is closer to Earth. So now, do you think that really is energy-wise where it's connecting? I think it is. Yes, I mean we're feeling that energy more than if it particularly if it has aspects with our charts or in this event.
That for sure. But I do think just when something is closer to Earth, just by proximity, energy has a greater influence. So I mean that makes sense to me. But but any of us who have things in our chart that are personally going to align with that, I mean, we're going to feel it.
Well, come to think of it, the tides have to be bigger. Yeah, so of course it does. And if the tides are moving, the water inside us is moving. That's why, So yes, I guess okay. Getting back to basics here in our own brains. But they did talk about the color of it, which is out in the news a lot, and it has everything to do with the sunsets and the sunrises, and they can't tell how much is going to be in the atmosphere. So it could be one of three, either no color, or it could be what they call a blood moon and have a reddish cast, or what they call a copper color. So anyway, folks, that's what this will be happening. But as far as the details, it does have a lot of, when I look at this and synthesize it a bit, it has such everything we've been talking about really with Capricorn just seems to be registering, because there is a lot of religious orientation too, with the energies here that are just going to pick up these features that are in Capricorn and bring them forth, in our consciousness for now until many moons.
Yeah. Sue, do you think that with the full moon being in Leo, Leo certainly as a sign is really about shining your own light, right? So it's interesting. We have the sun and moon in opposition in the sky, but the moon is in the sun's sign. So to me, like the lights are extra lit up on both sides. The light inside of you, the light in the dark, and the light in the day.
Oh, I agree.
What do you think about just the whole Leo aspect? How do you think it ties in?
Well, it is with the North Node, the moon, and it's at the very beginning. It's 0 degrees. So it is a new start. And just even, I think with nodes in Capricorn, this whole energy, it is a matter of starting in a new framework. Because also if the sun is in Aquarius, that can be like that strobe, light coming on, light going off, the lightning striking, where we distance, we break. I mean, Aquarius and Uranus break, and Uranus is squaring this. It wants to break up the pattern. So I would say that it is a fresh identity, looking at where we are masters and how we need to process these areas that are blocking us, because along with it, it may have a lot to do with our action. Saturn, which is ruling the node, the south node, and I guess from ancients, it's the sun, although I really go with Uranus more. But like you said, I think you were the one that was just saying that it was wonderful that if unless you have something to break up, I mean, Saturn represents what is the structure, and then Uranus comes and breaks it up. So unless you have something to break up, there's nothing to break up. So really, in that case, you can have these two. It's a pretty good teamwork going.
Oh yeah, or you can find new, innovative ways to work with whatever you've made. I mean, that's when those two come together. If the structure is sound, it doesn't need to break apart. Then it can just be about how can you tweak it or adjust it or make it useful or take it over here or put it over there or build on top of it. It becomes just this like tower of possibility. When you have a strong foundation, you can build almost anything. I think what happens more often here is that the foundation is not strong, with all this energy, especially with the Uranus piece you talked about, it's likely to blow it apart, which needs to happen, but that can be, very upsetting when we're not expecting it or not wanting it.
Well, if we're not in tune and we absolutely push aside the messages we get from our body, because we do get messages. I mean, I'm human, we're all human. And, it's so easy to put aside many, many facets of our own body, whether it's tired or whether there's an ache, a nosebleed even. I mean, it's maybe the one got excited and about something and the blood's pumping through too much. I mean, again and again, we get messages. So it's the whole body.
Well, and even letting the body do what it naturally needs to do. I mean, in our society here, at least in the United States, oftentimes we have rules for when you're supposed to do this, when you're supposed to do that, right? We hold things in. We try to not have things happen, bodily functions. And I think that over time, it's funny, think about that. That's repression and suppression, just like mentally or emotionally. We do it on all levels.
Yes.
And eventually it's going to explode out, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because energy never destroys, it just gets remade. Yeah. And in fact, I'm trying to see exactly where I found that last bit that you were saying, because oppression was actually the ancient definition of this energy that we have since called the devil. So instead of that, it was oppression, which we then come, and I don't see exactly, it's great to have all these notes, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I need a GPS on my notes.
Oppression is perfect. And even in the tarot, like the 10 of Wands, it's also a Saturn card, but it's the man with the 10 big sticks on his back, like just holding himself down. So it's a perfect illustration of, it's how we oppress ourselves. It's all the ways that we bind and overweight and make ourselves small and tight, contractions, part of this Capricorn energy, so that we can't, live more fully. I mean, I think as part of what that is. So the devil, in some respects, wants to poke at us to get us to liberate from those things. The devil, in like, as you spoke, to bringing it from the shadow into the light, right? It's helping us see where we're doing that, which might mean we have to feel it a little bit worse for a while. Sometimes, you have to really get yourself pushed into something to recognize what you're doing in order to change the pattern.
But I've read that that is exactly right, that energy really wants to unify body and spirit and recognize the body and desires of the mind. And so really it's a question, not that we have desires and like we were saying, rather than judging them, it'd be as though you're out sailing in the water and the wind, you need to tack differently. And then you decide, oh, well, that's a wrong wind. Why? And start arguing with the wind. Why are you going in that direction?
Awesome.
Yeah, actually, you just got to keep tacking. I mean, I don't sail, but I have the ideas down. So.
Yeah, it's funny how often we don't want to work with ourselves. We work against ourselves instead.
That's honesty, isn't it? It's sort of a way of truth, because I'm thinking like 9th house, 10th house are so focused, and 8th house, all focused on truth in these different illuminations. But really, because I was reading too, being reminded that Capricorn wants to build a structure for what they feel is right. And so it's what is right and what society thinks is right is a matter somewhat of how truthful they've been about what, and for how many. It's because, does it include everybody? I mean, now we're getting into Aquarius. That's right. Aquarius is going to start. Tomorrow's the full moon. The sun will be in Aquarius tomorrow. This is the very last edge of Capricorn. So we're on that cusp.
Yeah, so if there's areas you need to liberate yourself from, start now before the sun moves to Aquarius. So you could be the activator of the energy. I think that's a happy way to work with it.
Wonderful. And in fact, this reminds me too, a favorite page by Daily Ohm. It says, heal yourself with writing. And so, whether we have negative patterns or anything, just taking paper and writing it down. And I think it's because also it manifests, it makes it physicality, the words, the thoughts. And I was just being reminded too, listening on 1150 KKNW, that I think yesterday at, was it 11? I listened a couple times. I was driving about. And it was with the idea that we need to ask our guides, because I think really it has to do with free will. We do have free will, and then we're ready too if we ask. But by asking, then write down. She went over and over about this. She's been seeing her guides since she was 20 months. That's less than 2 years, come to think of it. And she has a book written by guides. Now, where's that in my little... Oh, here. I think I can find it. I can tell you who it was. Yes, that was on Linda Dyer, DIER.com. And she has a book called My Guided Journal. Yeah, because she was saying if you write it down, you can also look for it later. But it's this whole I was thinking Capricorn, manifestation. You're, yep, making it formed. Yeah, the ethics that the time is such we don't have to end. But unfortunately, yes, there is a limit. Capricorn, hello, thank you. Right. Yeah, next week will actually be the first week for Aquarius, and our speaker will be a person from the Seattle area called Madam Simon. That's Ximon, an astrologer who's also a tarot reader and has been studying about Lilith at great length, which really, actually, I met her at AWASA, Washington State Astrology Association, last Saturday, and she was bringing up Lilith. And I went, my little antenna went up, doing, 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 because Lilith has been in Aquarius this whole month, and the United States moon is 27 degrees Aquarius, and I was looking at the chart. It'll be fascinating. So anyway, that's what we'll be talking about. But tonight, just to remind our audience, I am speaking with Tara All. That's AAL, and you can find her at Talk Cosmos under guests. And you might mention, what is your actual website?
So it's Tara All, TaraAAL.com.
Okay, because yes, so do look, because there's so many fascinating ways that Tara. I know someone named Tara, so if I ever call you Tara, please forgive me. But it's Tara, yes. So you're speaking and doing many things, which is wonderful. I've been delighted and honored. I'm so glad again that you wanted to bring up this subject, because it is the core. It's the core of recognizing we are the masters of our fate and the destiny of our souls, or however that goes. Because if we don't see our obstacles, nobody else is. They can tell us, but we're the ones that have to rearrange the furniture inside, change the lens on our eyeballs.
That's right. And we are the devil. It's not outside. Sue, I have really enjoyed this. It's been so much fun. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're most welcome. Yeah, we have a few minutes. We don't have to quite leave, but I'm really glad. I always want to get out the next one.
It's been extra fun. Seattle is my hometown, so I have an affinity for that city, and it's a delight to be on Seattle radio.
Yes, and actually, it's going to be on podcast. KKNW is aligning themselves with a major podcast, so I'm looking forward to getting feedback from people, and I'll be launching a mailing email address pretty soon too. But we have 30 seconds. I don't know if we can squeeze something in 30 seconds. But when you go back to looking at how to reform karma, it was I think this was on a Netflix, and it was the intent of Buddha. The intent of action was more important than the ritual purpose. So We'll heal, we'll get whole, we'll embrace. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you for listening to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. to continue finding your roots in the stars.